Good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter, Minnesota. It is Monday, August 12th, 2024. We are called to order at 7:01 p.m. Would all please rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone should have received a copy of the agenda. Are there any revisions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as distributed?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Next up, review of the minutes. The minutes appear on pages 6 through 9 of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as distributed?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We have time set aside on our agenda for visitor comments. Is there any visitor who'd like to address the council on any agenda item? Hearing none, we also have time for general visitor comments. Is there any member of the audience who'd like to address the council on any matter whatsoever? Hearing none, we will move on to the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda runs on pages 10 through 32 and concludes with a resolution that is on page 33 of the packet. I'm going to get to that right page. The consent agenda includes the following purchases: to Wygen Water Technologies for a Rosemount triple channel transmitter, including probes and flow meters and installation at a cost of $31,351.30. Licenses, to a temporary on-sale liquor license to the Church of St. Peter on September 15th, to St. Peter Lions Club. Let's see, that is September 7th through 8th. A temporary gambling license for the Church of St. Peter, also on September 15th, and the St. Peter Lions Club on October 22nd, 2024. The following items listed within the memo in the packet will be declared surplus. Those are public works items, as well as the schedule of disbursements for July 17th, 2024 through June 6th. That must be August 6th, 2024, will be approved. Are there any revisions or corrections to any items on the consent agenda or any discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the resolution with that date correction?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Weisenfeld.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ram.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We have no items of unfinished business tonight, which is good news because we've got quite a lot of new business to get through. The first item is to initiate the sale of 2024 GO bonds. And Shannon Sweeney, it's great to have you here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Shannon Sweeney with David Brown Associates. In your packet was a fair amount of information discussing the issuance of $7,650,000 of general obligation bonds to fund a variety of projects that included the Pine Street, Klein Street, and Cullen Street projects, along with a variety of equipment purchases. Ultimately, we find some efficiencies when we are able to time things and issue together. Ultimately, you're paying your financial advisor to show up, twice instead of 4 or 5 times. Our bond counsel works a little bit more efficiently. Our credit rating is cheaper, and at the end of the day, there's some positive efficiencies that can be accomplished and just save us, in this instance, probably $20,000 to $30,000. So it's good to combine those things together when we can, because ultimately it results in some savings, and more money is going towards the actual streets and purchases of equipment. So that's a good thing. And so ultimately there's 2 components to this issue that involve street and utility reconstruction and new construction, along with the equipment purchases. Our debt service schedule looks a little bit weird when you look at it because ultimately we have a variety of terms on the equipment portions of the bond issue. We have improvement projects that we're financing over a 15-year term, and those are the street projects. We have a fire truck over a 10-year term, parks equipment over a 5-year term, HVAC for the community center, this facility, over a 10-year term, and then a significant electrical equipment component that we're financing over a 20-year term. Probably the most unique thing we're doing in the issue, besides putting all this stuff together, is financing electrical equipment. In most instances, when we're funding our electric utility, we're not able to issue general obligation bonds. We're issuing what's called an electric utility revenue bond that carries a higher interest rate because it doesn't carry the general obligation pledge of the city. We do have statutory authority to issue a general obligation note for equipment, however, and the project that we're implementing meets that test associated with being called equipment. So we can borrow a little bit more efficiently. Our disclosure requirements aren't as significant, so we pay our attorney less, our financial advisor less. Ultimately, the interest rate is probably somewhere between 1/4 and 0.5% lower in interest rate, and so we achieve some savings that way. And in recent legislation, I'd say in the last 5 years, they extended the duration of an equipment certificate to up to a 20-year term. It's important that we understand that part of it because this is larger than our normal equipment certificate. And so it's a significant component of our debt, but it's really funding something that's part of our enterprise system, a significant part of our enterprise system, our electric utility. Because it exceeds 0.25% of our estimated market value as a city, we're required to approve a resolution. That's one of the 2 approvals that I'll ask you for on this matter. That is a preliminary approval, that is a resolution that's published in the paper, and it indicates that residents have the opportunity to submit a petition for referendum within 10 days following that publication. It's a reverse referendum petition. We don't typically see those on equipment certificates because we're usually buying stuff we really need, including the repair of an electric substation that provides reliable electricity to our entire community. And so ultimately we think it probably shouldn't get a petition because our only other alternative is more expensive. And so understanding that is important as part of this process. Ultimately we're funding items on this list that are pretty important items, and it's causing us to publish that notice as part of this process. So when we get to the end of this, happy to answer questions on that component as well. As I mentioned, we have a 20-year term on the overall issue, but it's an uneven principal schedule for the reasons I previously mentioned. We would have the first ability to prepay debt on February 1st of 2032 as it's presently structured, meaning that we wouldn't allow any prepayments, or we're not allowed to prepay any principal until that time. Ultimately, if we shorten that prepayment provision, then we start to see our interest rate creep a little bit. Not a lot, but it does cost us more money in interest if we have a shorter duration between when we issue and when we prepay. So it's a interesting nuance of bonds, but it's part of what we have to deal with and work around as we structure this issue. We are proposing to do this as a competitive sale process, meaning an offering document is prepared. It's called an official statement. It contains lots of information about the community, including outstanding debt, cash position, future financings that are being considered, all those sorts of things. And that offering document is sent to a credit rating agency who we pay handsomely to give us a letter grade with regard to our credit rating for the city. And so that credit rating, while it's not a fun process by any stretch of the imagination, ultimately, and it costs a lot of money. And so if we were able to avoid it, I think Todd and I would both tell you that we would not do that if we didn't have to. But at the end of the day, it saves us probably closer to 0.5 to 0.75% versus an unrated bond issue, which on this amount of money, $7,650,000, is hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's well worth the process. What else can I tell you other than if you choose to initiate the sale tonight, We would be looking to receive bids and award sale on September 23rd, and then we'd have funds available on October 8th. And we do have projects that have been in process that we've previously adopted reimbursement resolutions for, that we're gonna use a fair amount of these proceeds to replenish our cash, because we've been spending some money to implement projects, with the understanding that we have some efficiencies in doing all these together at once. So I believe everything related to the street construction has a bid, and so we have a pretty good feel for what those projects are gonna cost. And so, happy to answer questions. Ultimately, again, there's two actions associated with this. One is authorizing us to proceed with that competitive sale process, and the second is a resolution that it's a separate agenda item, but it pertains to the equipment certificate portion of this, or the equipment note and the publication of that notice. So, happy to answer questions, council.
Thank you. Any questions? Or do you have anything to add, Todd?
I do not have anything to add.
Okay.
I have a question. Will we be doing a 2024 equipment note over and above this also for other equipment that we purchased, or have we done that already this year?
We have not done that this year.
Will we-
That's part of this.
That is part of this?
Yep.
So there won't be another equipment?
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions? Yeah.
We'd had some discussion about trying to do 2025 before year end, as you work your way through the budget process. But that would be if you identify items or expenditures for 2025. And the rationale for that is we have some other things in process that would be impacted if we waited until 2025 to actually issue that equipment certificate. So,
Or if we had concerns about the marketplace deviating considerably from where it is today.
yeah, but just so I don't surprise you if we're back here before the end of the year, but you have to work your way through your budget process to decide if that's even gonna come to fruition, so.
So this includes the 2024 stuff. We haven't determined 2025 stuff yet.
Thank you. And this is the transformer for the substation.
That's the
and
biggest chunk of
switchgear.
this.
That's the biggest. We've
And the
been-
fire truck there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fire truck.
Yeah.
Parks equipment, HVAC for the community center is part of this equipment certificate.
Which is on your agenda later this evening.
And we've been talking about this transformer switchgear for many years.
Yep.
Years. Yeah.
And it's been ordered, and it's ready in process.
You've
So-
approved bids, we know exactly where we're at.
Yep.
Starting to install and the switchgear goes in September, so
This
that's
fall.
where, yep.
Further questions or discussion? Hearing nothing further, the resolution providing for the competitive negotiated sale of 7,650,000 general obligation bonds, Series 2024A, is on page 39 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sharpstown?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rampt?
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Do you have anything you'd like to add before we move on to the next resolution?
If you act on the next resolution, you'll see it published in the newspaper next week. most
Okay.
likely.
The next resolution is determining the necessity to issue a general obligation capital note not to exceed $2,750,000. That appears on pages 40 through 41 of the packet. Are there any questions on that one? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Rampt?
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstown?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Moving on to decertification of TIF number 1-17 Jefferson Avenue.
Thank you, Mayor. Ultimately, a redevelopment tax increment financing district has 5 years, which TIF District 1-17 has 5 years to incur its obligations, and thereafter it can't take on any new debt or pay-as-you-go agreements or anything like that, based on state statute. So the district was created ultimately to promote some redevelopment in that Jefferson Avenue US 169 intersection. It helped us pay for some infrastructure that we installed in that area. We assisted one local business in that area. And ultimately, we paid off those obligations, and we can't do anything else with that dough. And so ultimately, it's time to benefit from the tax base by decertifying the district, because it'll be part of our general tax base at that point. We'll no longer be capturing tax increment there. And we'll be returning some funds that we've already collected that we're not able to use, and ultimately we'll receive some of those funds back as redistributed funds that will go into our general fund. And so it's appropriate to say goodbye to TIF District 1-17 and go through the process that requires a resolution. It requires a form submitted to the county. Both the resolution and the form go to the state of Minnesota, so we make everybody happy that understands that we've made this go away. So.
All right. Any questions for Shannon or anything to add? Todd?
The only other comment that I'd make is that the council here has always been judicious in its use of these things, and this worked as it was supposed to. It is now at its end of life, and this is how its life ends.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the resolution approving the decertification of tax increment financing district number 1-17 of the city of St. Peter appears on page 43 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp?
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye. The resolution is approved. Our next resolution calls for a public hearing on the creation of tax increment financing district number 1-27 within municipal development district number 1 and the adoption of a tax increment financing plan relating hereto.
Thank you. BRM Holdings has expressed an interest in constructing a new mixed-use building on the old library lot across from City Hall at 107 West Nassau. They're proposing to include 3,214 square feet of commercial space on the ground level, which they are able to do in a housing tax increment district. As it's a vacant site, it's not eligible for redevelopment. Because it's a housing district, you're limited in how much space can be dedicated for commercial purposes, which is 20%, and it meets that threshold. And ultimately, they're intending to construct this facility, but have requested tax increment assistance to assist with that process. As we've discussed in the past, the use of a housing tax increment financing district means that they have to meet specific income restrictions, and all but one time, developers have selected the income restriction I reference in here, which is 20% of units need to be made available to tenants below 50% of median area income by family size. The other alternative is 40% of the units are at 60% of median family or area median income, and that's by family size. Those are monitored for the duration of the subsidy, and developers ultimately are submitting documentation to the city that they're meeting those requirements. This developer has requested 14 years of pay-as-you-go assistance, meaning if we create this tax increment district, we're going to capture the new incremental increase in property taxes that would normally go to the city, county, and some to the school district, and we're redirecting those that are ultimately captured by the county, provided to the city for a specific public purpose that's identified in statute. In this instance, it's for 90% of the funds collected have to be spent on the creation of housing that meets the income restrictions outlined in statute. And so we say virtually all the funds have to be spent on housing, and so and that's the proposal here. Ultimately, the developer would be required to build the project, pay their property taxes on time and in full, meet the income restrictions that we apply, and if they do that, we would reimburse a portion of that property tax they pay on an annual basis over a period of 14 years. Ultimately, they're generally making the case that that subsidy allows them to designate those 20% of their units for folks at 50% of area median income. For us to implement this, a public hearing was required, and the action that you'd be taking this evening would be calling that public hearing so that we can receive public comment on October 14th regarding the creation of the TIF district. Following the public hearing that evening, it's most likely that we'd present a development agreement to you that would outline those terms I've referenced in this document, which is a reimbursement of property tax for a specific period of time. In this instance, 14 years is the request. Happy to answer your questions on the action to be taken. Again, it's calling the hearing tonight. You haven't obligated yourself at this point, but you're certainly setting the wheels in motion to have an obligation presented. So, thank you.
Questions for Shannon? Carrie?
I just caught your comment about this sort of mechanism allows the developer to meet the thresholds for the income requirements when there is a TIF district. It's been my understanding also that construction costs, the way that they are so high, is that still a factor in why there would be
Yes.
motivated to go after TIF?
Yeah, it's twofold. It's not only construction costs, but it's interest rates on the financing that they're able to secure as well. In fact, I've heard more complaining about interest rates lately.
Than
They were
construction costs.
starting to kind of get used to the construction costs, and they've somewhat stabilized.
Yeah.
But the interest on the financing is problematic as well.
And where is
for-
that at for construction now?
It's been, the discussions I've been involved in have been in that 7% range.
Okay. Thank you.
That will vary based on who the developer is
Yes.
and where they are at in their process, the amount of cash they have. It's really based on the developer and where they're at financially.
Additional questions or discussion? Daryl?
Since this is a parcel that's currently owned by the city, in essence, we're not collecting any property tax on it now. So we, in essence, if we were to do this TIF district, we would still collect about 10% of the property tax.
Yeah, you're close. We will retain 10%, and it's available for either other housing activity that qualifies, that meets the income requirement, or your administrative costs. Your administrative costs won't be 10%, so you'll probably accumulate a little cash. And if we've monitored that in your other housing districts, and when projects have needed some assistance on debt service or something, that those funds are available. I would also tell you that the underlying property, once it's put into a TIF district, by state statute, the auditor is required to identify that underlying value that they're carrying, and we're not able to capture that as tax increment. So I think there was, I'd be speculating what the value was.
Please don't.
Yep.
Yeah,
Please don't.
yeah. So that value then gets registered against it,
Yes.
and so it looks like a tax increment financing district that was developed on an already taxable parcel.
Yes, so everybody benefits a little bit because that portion becomes taxable.
Which it is not now.
Correct.
It's owned by the
Yeah.
city.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And if I could, the other thing that I'd mention is that this is very similar or substantially similar to the deals that you have done in the past related to the percentage share and the term.
Additional discussion? Hearing nothing further, the resolution calling for a public hearing on the creation of tax increment financing district number 1-27 within municipal development district number 1, and the adoption of a tax increment financing plan relating thereto is on page 46 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, we are going to move on to our next item, which is North Industrial Park Subdivision Number 4, Preliminary Plat, Veterinary Pharmaceutical Solutions Building Addition, and Ben is here to talk to us about that.
Thank you, Mayor Noel, members of the council. The next two agenda items, typically we are doing subdivisions, but these two will actually be parcel combinations, so just a little different twist. So I'll go through the first one, starting on page 48 of your packet. Back in 2002, the city developed the North Industrial Park. A few years later, the city collaborated with the Development Corporation, and they erected a 10,000 square foot building. This was a spec building, hoping to entice new business or business expansion up in the business park. And then shortly after, VetRx decided to move there, and that was a great move. And then VetRx, which now has become VPS, or Veterinary Pharmaceutical Solutions, is looking to expand. Their business is growing, and they're needing an additional 8,300 square feet. This was stemmed from the Soderlund family and the Soderlund Village Drug. If you go into page 49, you'll see that the property valuation and proposed employment will both increase $1 million for valuation and about 10 new jobs, which is exciting. Due to the proposed addition, the applicant is requesting that the North Industrial Park subdivision number 4 be combined Tract A and Tract B, which is the old RLS number 55. So combining these tracts will allow for no encroachments. Everything will be contained on one lot. This is zoned I-1, and all the requirements of the I-1 district will be met. There is road and sidewalk, sewer, water, storm, and electric all available to this site currently. The Planning Commission did look at this on August 1st and recommended approval after holding a public hearing. As far as fiscal impact, there was talk about potential TIF for this project. They have elected not to take that assistance. So with that, once the new addition is constructed on Lot 1, the city, the school district, and the county will each receive their portion. It's estimated to be around $60,000 a year, which is a $30,000 increase. So with that, the attachments show where the project is, and essentially it's just taking out that line between Tract A and Tract B, allowing for both the building and the parking lot to expand further to the south. So in this case, and along with the next agenda item, there was a preliminary plat resolution and a final plat resolution. So with that, it would be the Planning Commission and staff's recommendation to approve both those plats.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or discussion? Anybody on the Planning Commission have anything to add? All right, the resolution on page 53 is the North Industrial Park subdivision number 4 preliminary plat for VPS building addition. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Anything to discuss or anything you want to add before we move on to the final plat?
No.
All right. The North Industrial Park subdivision number 4 final plat for Veterinary Pharmaceutical Solutions building addition is on page 55 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Weisenfeld,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Our next resolution is the preliminary plat registered land survey number 82 tract combination for 1503 Winona Street.
And Todd, if you could maybe go to page 60 to show the visual there. This one, 2 years ago, the owners of 1125 Lloyd Lane actually subdivided their property into 2 parcels or 2 tracts with a RLS. 67-foot wide residential lot is what they formed, and then they also kept a 25-foot wide buffer strip. You'll see those greenery or bushes or screening trees going up and down right there. That was just to create a little bit of space between the neighbors. So with that, there's been some difficulty in selling that residential lot due to the narrow lot width. Just for reference, along Winona Street, a lot of the lots range from 90 to 110 feet wide and easily accommodate a 3-stall garage. So with that, recently there was a interested buyer that was found, and purchase agreement that was established. And with that, one of the conditions was that basically this parcel revert to back to a 92-foot wide lot. So essentially taking the old RLS and adopting the new RLS 82, which reestablishes back that wider lot. So the Planning Commission did look at this back on August 1st after a public hearing and did recommend approval. This is part of the R1 single family district and everything is met. We have accessible road and sidewalks, sewer, water, electric. And the fiscal impact would be as if this does turn into a new home next year after it's constructed, that home would probably estimate about $5,750 worth of property taxes that would be divvied up between the school, the city, and the county. So attached you'll see both the preliminary and the final plat again with the proposed resolutions as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure, any questions for Ben? Hearing no questions or discussions, the preliminary plat is, a resolution approving the preliminary plat is on page 63 through 64 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sharstrom.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. If there are no questions or discussion about the final plat, that resolution appears on pages 66 through 67 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, the 2024 Housing Study Acceptance.
All right, thank you, Mayor Noel and members of the council. Previous housing studies have proven to be invaluable to the city. These studies have served to guide the city council as they've determined the acceptable municipal role in residential development. So back in 2005 there was a study done. 2012 there was a study done, and then an update in 2014 that addressed more of the affordable housing. We do like to see, or the housing experts like to see, or they advise every 2 to 5 years having an update. So we did review this at a previous workshop, and this 2024 housing study will serve as the basis for housing decisions, funding opportunities, and work with the 2026 comprehensive planning process. It'll also provide home builders, developers, banks, and investors solid information to entice them to look at St. Peter when they're looking to either redevelop or do development projects. Once this is adopted, the final draft will go on the city's website. We'll also distribute it to the school district, the county, and other partners that are interested in housing. There is an executive summary that's attached, and everybody was provided with the full study. I was just going to go over a few of the highlights here in bullet points that the housing study came up with. So over the last 5 years, the city's averaged nearly 58 new construction housing units per year. So this would be both rental and owner occupied. Over the past 10 years, there were 321 multifamily residential units constructed. There is currently a limited supply of vacant residential lots. We've been talking about that over the last couple years. Much of the expected growth through 2028 will be in the older age ranges. The estimated median household income for renter households was $39,000 compared to $99,000 for homeowners. And then 40% of renters were applying 30% or more of their income to housing costs. Rental occupancy rates remain very high in all independent rental segments. The city should really look at promoting 180 to 220 more rental units over the next 5 years. The city should look at expanding 60 to 90 senior housing units. Also promote various home ownership opportunities and price ranges, and continue to work with owner-occupied and rental rehab programs like the MVAC program that we'll look to do hopefully over the next year. So again, probably look at doing this study again in a couple years, but for now we're just looking at accepting this document, putting it on our website and giving that to all the people that are interested in housing. This was budgeted for $25,000. It came $3,000 under. And I guess it would be staff's recommendation to accept this housing study.
As you mentioned, we did have a discussion about it at a previous workshop, but happy to have further discussion or questions for Ben. Ben?
The one thing that I'd like to bring up that was brought to our attention was going through the housing study. St. Peter's actually looked at as kind of a benchmark for other cities to kind of blossom to be when it comes to housing. So that's kind of a kudos and a pat on our back. So it's kind of nice to hear from somebody who does housing studies, not only in the state of Minnesota, but in neighboring states. So,
Yep. Carrie?
So the legislature, state legislature, not in this last session, but the session before, approved quite a bit of money for housing programs. How does the housing study aid in our ability to access some of those funds for projects here?
Well, anytime with whether it's parks plan or transportation plan or housing data and numbers and plans, anytime we have that ready to go, that helps us just have a leg up on any type of funding that could be available. So,
Oftentimes, the funders are looking for this information from a credible source that's well documented, and this is the kind of stuff that does that.
Thank you.
I would piggyback a little bit on what Councilmember Ramp said about the city. The council certainly has housing as a high priority and has had the entire time I've been on the council. But it's good to have sort of an outside source coming in and looking at things. We've made a lot of progress, like of the, I don't know how many housing units you said we've added in the last 10 years of rental housing. A lot of that has been actually in the last 3 years. And so it feels like, boy, we've done a lot. We can probably pump the brakes on that. But, you know, things like at the, as they pointed out, we probably need more rental housing. Things like that are interesting to hear, nice to have an outside perspective. So I'm sure we will refer to this report a lot.
As Ben mentioned, this is something also that we share with developers. And oftentimes they or their bankers are looking for an outside source of information about statistically where are things at. And so this is a great tool for them as they consider investing in your community. And so that value alone is worth the cost of this.
Yeah. Dustin?
I think it's also worth noting something that came out. The housing that we're currently seeing right now and the projects we're going into actually combat the numbers of houses that were built in the late 1990s, and we've seen nowhere near those numbers in over 20 years.
Yeah. Well, if there is no further commentary or discussion, the resolution accepting the 2024 St. Peter Housing Study update is on page 87 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
so moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp?
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye. The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Next up, city assistance for Rock Bend Folk Festival.
Mayor, members, the information is included in your packet, and it's this great time of year when we hear from our friends at Rock Bend for the event that they look to do, which will come up with your approval in just a few short weeks. It's always a fantastic event, and the folks have been putting it on now for over 30 years. I believe this will be year 33, if I remember properly. You'll see documentation included in your packet, not only from staff, but from the Rock Bend organizers, which is a group of volunteers, many of whom reside in St. Peter, and put this magical thing all together. There's a resolution included in your packet on page 92 or 93 related to what we will provide to assist them and what they provide. And so certainly you've read that and seen this before, but I wanted to illustrate just a couple of major things that go on as a part of this. First of all, they're required to have insurance for utilization of the park. That is substantially similar to what you require from all folks that are using public rights-of-way or public facilities, including parks. We do anticipate that there's a cost to provide this assistance, but it's well worth it when we consider the number of people that generally come to St. Peter and spend dollars and participate in activities within your community. We, as you know, no longer have a police reserve, so we don't provide security overnight for equipment and other things, and so they're responsible for providing that. And they are always, at least from my perspective, and I think from probably the recreation director's perspective and the police chief's perspective and the public works director's perspective, are always great to work with. And if we have problems or concerns or challenges, we work together to address those. And so they're always great about porta potties and handicap porta potties and access to the park and all of those kind of things. So these are great people to work with a wonderful event in town, as is your practice and is required. There's a resolution within your packet that meets some of the hard nuts and bolts criteria from your ordinance, but also provides some assistance or shows what assistance we're going to provide for them as they put on this activity. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. But again, I think this is the 33rd year of Rock Bend Folk Festival, so how cool for them and for us and for the community.
Yeah. Any questions for Todd or any discussion? Hearing nothing, the resolution authorizing city assistance for Rock Bend Folk Festival appears on pages 92 through 93 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion in 2 seconds, I think. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Let's see, second to last item of new business, Community Center Chiller Bid Award.
Members, John is here, and we'll have him come on up if you have any specific questions. I'll do kind of a quick introduction, and he and his team put together the process for this and the bids and RFP for this system. And so, John, I'll let you take it away and fill in, or if anybody has questions, I'm happy to provide, and John can speak to, and I'll let him speak to the need, and then I'll talk about the numbers a little bit, if that's okay.
Absolutely, and I am coming to this process a little behind the 8 ball as well, because it was started prior to my arrival here, but working with my staff, specifically the maintenance staff, and Todd on this, it sounds like this is long overdue. We are starting to see some of the wear and tear on the chiller, which is affecting the efficiency of this building, and being noticed. I know that it was originally planned for last year, but due to the dire need of the library's equipment, that was prioritized, and so it was shifted to this year. I really think the only thing that was a brief setback on that was the originally budgeted amount never changed based on the essentially 2 years now that we have, hence why we're coming with the higher numbers from the bid process. So with that in mind, it is certainly something that is needed at this point. I know that Eric, our facility maintenance lead, is very anxious to do this, and again, primarily for the efficiencies that it will allow this building to operate under. So with that, I would welcome any questions that any members of the council have.
Any questions or anything to add?
Members, you had 2 bids on this, one from Gogs, who did the work for your library last year, and Schwickert's Tech to America. And so you can see those bids included in the packet. These bids include 5 years parts and labor warranty. And as John indicated, you can't really make this building go well during the summer without this equipment. 2 major challenges that you see, one of which is the ability to get repairs done because of the availability of parts. And then, as is mentioned in the memo, the refrigerant that is used is no longer manufactured, allowed for use. And so our ability to get enough of that to make this go, should we have a substantial failure in system or loss of refrigerant, would mean that the system wouldn't go, and then we'd be in a scurry, in an emergency to try and make something go here. I know this is a tough one due to the nature of the estimate and the bids that we're at, but it is something that you need to continue to have in place. This hopefully puts us in a position so that by the time you get to next summer, you're in good shape, and you'll be in good shape for another 20 plus years.
Ben?
I agree that we definitely do need it. I think in the future we do need to refresh those estimates when we're budgeting, because we're almost 50% over what we had in the budget, and that's a huge difference. And for estimates to change over the course of 2 years, that's a big jump in 2 years. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I buy you know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and I know things have gone up, but for something to increase in price 50% over the course of 2 years seems like a pretty big jump. But it's something we need. It is what it is. So, but in the future, we need to definitely look at maybe refreshing those if we're going to kick the can down the road, so that way we can have a little bit better estimate going forward.
My concern was more so just how far off we are on our estimate. In my time on council, we haven't had any item that we've purchased that has been nearly this far off.
So let me,
Yeah.
If I may, I think one of the challenges that was the timing of my predecessor's departure being in the budget season, the moving of everything. I'm not justifying anything, but I think that process may have expedited this, and maybe some things with Todd's desk being filled up with so many other things, as well as my team, my current teams without a director. I think there were a lot of challenges. Again, certainly not making excuses on that. I think that just had a lot of the timing was a very challenging process, I think, for everybody involved. And then, as was previously mentioned, I think construction pieces went up. I do know in my time here talking with my staff, they were anticipating an increase of what was budgeted, and I would agree fully that in the future that it would be the plan to go out and revisit it if something is pushed out versus simply rolling forward a number. So as far as my process goes, that will be absolutely included.
Carrie.
Well, I wonder if this is what, Todd, you were gonna say. Just my recollection is we did the swap for equipment because there was a pressing need. And the way that I look at it, regardless of how this shook out, and those costs would have been higher than what we originally budgeted. And the need for the swap was necessary based on how we were prioritizing. We would have purchased the chiller earlier, but we ended up swapping based on need. And what was that equipment again that we swapped with?
it was a chiller for the
chiller.
library.
For the library, that's right.
Yeah. And if I can,
Can I, Mayor, can I
Do
bring up?
you want to come up to the microphone so they can get you?
Just taking you back to last year when we did the swap out, the chiller for the library came in almost half of what we thought it was going to be. So that's why we left the bid at $275. We thought we were in the range because those held. So
Thank you. That was my
that-
recollection as
yep.
well as
So
the
That makes sense.
library came.
that's another reason when we talked through the budget process, it's like, well, the chiller for the library was at 90 and we had 150 in there. So we felt confident that the 275 would probably hold.
And I think that's valuable to share because on the surface, if you just look at the dollar bill amount we had and the bids we're accepting, it doesn't look very favorable on our
Right,
behalf.
I agree, but that's one of the reasons when we talked through the equipment certificate and the numbers that we were putting in last year for the budget, that's one of the reasons why we left it.
For sure.
ultimately, the estimates that you hear are my office's responsibility to make sure that they're on target. I would also like to mention, and I think this is not unimportant, this was intended to be funded through debt service. So not that the estimate mattered or didn't matter, but it mattered substantially less because this was gonna be funded through an equipment certificate, which from a cash perspective ends up being kind of a zero net. And so we did not go through the effort or the cost to re-estimate this project based on the data that we had seen with the old, with the library chiller. So
Carrie.
How long has this chiller that we have currently lasted, and what is the life expectancy of a new chiller in today's world?
This one has been in place since the building was built, so it has not been replaced since that time, so it's more than 20 years old.
Okay.
And in fact, it was operational prior to occupancy of the building because it was utilized while some of the construction was going on, drying out sheetrock, all of those kind of things as you can imagine. And so it's been in place more than 20 years, and we'll see a similar, if not better, life expectancy with this. I think what you see, the challenge, and we wouldn't be looking to do a new one if parts were continued to be readily available and there hadn't been the change in the EPA rules related to refrigerant. Those are two significant factors that move us forward. If parts were available, if that refrigerant was readily available, we'd fix until we just couldn't fix anymore, but we are at that point now.
One more question. Just like a lot of things, the lead time is far away. So
Yep.
it says 30 weeks.
Yep.
And so that brings us to March-ish. And so how does that work? Kind of bringing one in, taking one out, and that all is supposed to work before it gets warm?
So the estimated construction timeline is 30 days or less.
Okay.
And so one hopes that it all works as planned. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but that does give us a little bit of wiggle room here to make that go. And we feel confident in the ability. Both of these contractors have good track records. Gogs, when they did the work on the library, that worked within the timeline that was predicted. As we took bids for this, we asked them to provide those timelines. And so, at least from my perspective, we believe that they can be, that they're just not made up, that they're within the realm of reasonableness as they provided bids for the project.
Thank you.
Can I add to that real quick? I will also add that staff has been in touch with both of these vendors to kind of discuss that very question, and we both feel very confident that while there is lead time, that we will be ready for next summer.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Hearing no further discussion, the resolution awarding the 2024 Community Center Chiller Replacement Project is on page 96 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our final item of new business tonight is a resolution approving new licenses.
Members, you'll see information included within your packet and a resolution not quite to page 100. It's really the last resolution second to the last resolution within your packet. And so you'll see for Chuck Day, doing business as the Flame Bar, for their on-sale, Sunday sale, and off-sale license. The reason for the dates being not an entire year is, as you know, those licenses start and stop at the end of June, beginning July. So people purchase them on a pro rata basis depending on when a change order is occurring. This relates to the sale of the Flame. Tobacco, this location might be familiar to you, but this is for United Fuels Midwest, which is generally the what we might consider the BP station, which has a sale as well, and then the show license, as they have music and other activities going on at the Flame Bar. All of these are new licenses because they are new applicants. As you know, according to your policy, renewals go on your consent agenda. New licenses come for an action item. And so this resolution represents that action item.
And for folks at home who don't have the memo in front of them, all these folks, because they're new, they go through a background investigation process.
There's nothing,
Yep.
Madam Mayor, that would bring us cause to pause with providing these licenses.
Any questions or discussion? All right, the resolution approving new licenses is on page 98 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Weisenfeld,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Moving on to reports, and I kind of lied. We actually have new business at the end of the agenda, but it's interrupted by reports. A report from the mayor. I'd only like to thank everybody on the Fair Board who participated and all the additional volunteers for making the Nicollet County Fair go. It's a lot of work, a lot of people working really hard, and a great event for our community. So that is all I wanted to mention. We have time for council members who'd like to make reports. Carrie Johnson.
I was just going to report on the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities Conference that was in late July, and Council Member Pettis also attended. Some of the topics at the conference related to policy discussions on EMS, and then also housing. Among other topics, it's also an opportunity for the coalition to accomplish business, so setting the budget for the year. And it's also such a great networking opportunity. And for those at home, the coalition advocates for towns like St. Peter, cities like St. Peter, who are in Greater Minnesota, advocating for our unique needs in Greater Minnesota. And so what was, I think, fun for me and likely Councilmember Pettis, was there was an opportunity where we got to do different tables and talk about, you know, what do we want to see our dues go towards, what types of policy discussions were of top of mind for cities, so that really sets the lens or the frame for the coalition as we go into the policy committees, which any of our council and council members across Greater Minnesota who are part of the coalition can participate in those policy committees, and it's always really great to do that. So I encourage that when you see those opportunities to come up to participate.
And they have a meeting 15th
Oh, the 15th of August.
in Mankato.
Oh, yes, and then there's a regional meeting August 15th, and I don't know, I think registration may still be open for that if you haven't registered.
I'll be
And
happy
as a
there.
part of the new business, I was elected to, or elevated to first vice president
Congratulations.
over second vice
Very
president,
cool.
so climbing the
Congratulations.
coalition ladder.
Well,
Thank you.
Thanks for serving the coalition and representing St. Peter.
Thank you.
Any other council member reports? Then we will move on to city administrator reports.
Madam Mayor, I don't have any reports tonight, but I do have a request to approve a resolution that's on the last page of your packet.
All right, that resolution calls for a closed session related to property at 1 Scholarship Way and 107 West Nassau. Is there any discussion, or do we have a motion to?
The only thing I want to point out, I think you said this, this is for 2 separate closed sessions, one for each property.
Right.
And I do anticipate potentially coming back to take action on one of those properties.
So we will stay in this room. We
Yes.
will. Sorry, we'll kick everybody out. We'll have the closed session, then we'll return to open session to take action.
That would be the plan.
All right.
Yes.
Is there any questions or discussion? Is there a motion to approve the resolution on page 99 calling for a closed session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sherstrom.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp.
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. It is 7:59 PM and we are adjourned from open session. Good evening. This is a regular meeting of the St. Peter City Council. We are returning to open session at 8:42 PM to consider a purchase agreement and development agreement for real estate located at 107 West Nassau.
Mayor and members, there's information on your desk related to the potential purchase and development of 107 West Nassau. Ben is here to provide some information related to the discussions that you've had previously and where we think we are now. So Ben, if you wouldn't mind coming up, and we'll go through that, and if you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer.
All right, thanks Todd and Mayor and members of the council. The lot we were talking about tonight is 107 West Nassau, across from the current City Hall and Police Station. This was previously the Loomis Building. It was also known as the old library. After going from the Carnegie Library, it was then placed here at 107 Nassau, now referred to as the old library lot after the tornado. The council has discussed over the summer a couple times the potential interest in this lot. And what we're looking at is a 3-story building that would house some commercial at ground level and 22 units of residential, both at the ground level in story 2 and then story 3. There would be parking on the north side. There would also be parking in the nearby area that we'd have agreements set up for, so that we'd have a 1-to-1 parking ratio of off-street parking to units. This project does propose new sidewalks both along Nassau and Front Street. There would be trees that would go in, those sidewalks, also some planters with irrigation. There'd be a little bit of green space and an enclosed dumpster. There's two things that we're looking at tonight. One is the purchase agreement, and that would be for $50,000. The other thing would be a development agreement, and that kind of walks through the zoning, some of those things that site-specific and building-specific things that we talked about as far as design, the green space, the dumpster, the lighting. If this project developed, we would also acquire about $45,000 in building and utility fees, and the $50,000 would go towards, the purchase price would go towards parks. So I guess with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ben? Carrie?
I just wanted to make a comment and refer back to our housing study about the need for, what was it, Ben, approximately 180 more units of multifamily housing or apartment housing of this type. And so I think obviously 22 units doesn't eat up a whole lot of that, but we keep moving the needle toward those goals. And so we want to be supportive of housing in bikeable, walkable areas to retail, and this is a good opportunity for a lot that has been vacant up until recently when we had the plaza and some activity down there, but that we can also use the space for housing.
Any additional questions or comments? Dustin?
Well, thank you, Ben, for getting this done. This is a piece of property that for 26 years has had nothing on it, and we've collected nothing in tax revenue from it. And we're now going to have potential for more housing in town and more business space.
Yeah. All right. The resolution before us enters into a purchase agreement and development agreement for property located at 107 West Nassau. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Ramp,
Aye.
Councilmember Weisenfeld,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharstrom.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for
Thank you.
all the work you've done on this. There is no more business before us tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Past week, we've been short one person who's been messaging. I just shared it with you.